Today is April 24th, and this is part 2 of my 2015 garden series of videos. In this video I want to go over this grow tent that I built in my basement, talk about how I built it, why I built it, the materials I used, and how you can do it on a budget. Also, if you don't have much space, which I don't. Also, I want to talk about starting seeds. I'll show you guys some seeds I've already got started, how I do it, the materials, the cups, the lights, things like that I use, and we'll also go over some tricks that I've learned over the years to make planting easier, and then also taking care of the plants all the way up until the point they're ready to go in the ground easier. So let's get started. Okay, first off I want to talk about why I built this grow tent. First of all, I planted a lot of seeds. Buying a grow tent this size, this is about 8 feet long by about 4 feet deep. Buying one this size is a lot of money. You can look online and there are a lot of really nice ones out there, but most of them are pretty small, and as you get up in size they get really expensive, and I really didn't need anything fancy. The only space I had to set one up was in my basement where nobody's going to see it anyway. It doesn't matter if it's an eyesore, it doesn't need to be beautiful, so I decided I would just build my own. So the primary component to this entire thing is that it's surrounded by tarps. It's got 2 tarps that go around the outside edge. They close up so that we can keep heat in, and also for me, keeps my cats out. Also, it has a blue tarp along the top, keep the heat from rising out of the top in between the beams that are above it. And then behind it is just my cinder block and granite slab foundation wall. So it's surrounded all the way. As we take a look inside of the grow tent, the main component here is this big workbench. And this actually was here when I bought the house. I just repurposed it. I'm not sure what the old owners used it for, but it's huge and it's really heavy, and I needed something to set my stuff up on, and this just happened to work out perfectly. Obviously, if you don't have something like this, any kind of a table or maybe some sawhorses with some boards on the top, anything to hold your plants up at a nice comfortable working height is really all you need. It does not need to be fancy. Then once we go inside, I have a couple different light setups I've been experimenting over the years. These are the ones I would recommend. These are 4 bulb light fixtures. I bought the bulbs at Lowe's because it's the only place in town that carried them, and I actually had to buy the fixtures at Home Depot because, again, it was the only place in town that carried them. These are T5 bulbs. It's very important you get the correct bulbs. T20s and T8s do not generate enough light, enough power to grow plants. Your plants will just look horrible and be yellow and die. So T5, these are Sylvania bulbs, but really any T5 will do. There are some that specifically say they are for growing, and maybe they work better. I haven't really ever noticed, but as long as they're T5, you'll make them work. These were my original lights. Now see, on this one I actually bought 3 single bulbs. Get down here and you can see it. Or no, I apologize, 3 sets of doubles. And I mounted them on top with some boards and some hooks, and I thought that would work best. And then I realized that they're too close together. The plants don't really need them that close together, and it just makes it so it's a smaller grow area underneath. So then I took one set and I did the same kind of thing. These are 3 sets of double bulbs, so there's actually 6 bulbs, and this time I spaced them out further. This actually works pretty well, but for the extra time invested to build this, I just recommend going with these pre-built 4 bulb setups. They work really well. In all of the cases, to save money, I just used some old chain I had laying around. I didn't really do anything fancy. Got some hooks on the ceiling. In the wooden cases, I put hooks down here, and in these cases, they already had eye loops built right in. So pretty basic. Just you know, can shorten the chain up, move things up to bring the lights up, move them down to get them closer to the plants, and that's it. One thing to note on this setup is that none of these light fixtures come with plugs on them. All of them are meant to be wired in to either a chain of lights where you'd knock out a punch out and then wire it in for another series of lights in like a building, or to be wired directly into a breaker panel, something like that. So if you have wiring experience, which I do, you can do it a couple of different ways. You can hardwire it in on a breaker or on a switch, or in this case I grabbed a couple of old cords I had laying around, wired it in, not the most beautiful wiring job ever, but it worked, and then just plugged it into a power strip, which I then have hooked to a timer. If you do not have experience with wiring, I don't advise you do this on your own. Either hire an electrician or find somebody who has experience who can do it for you, or take a look around and see what you can find for fixtures in your area that do come with wires already hooked up to them. In hindsight, I probably would have put this all onto a switch so I could control it easier, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do for a setup when I first built this, so this was just kind of the most flexible option. One more thing I wanted to talk about with the grow tent was location. I do not have an ideal location for this. This is in my dark basement. There are no windows down here. Ideally, you'll have a spot in your house where you could put this in front of some big windows or glass doors where it can get a lot of natural light throughout the day. In that case, you can use the artificial light just to supplement a few hours in the morning, maybe a few hours in the evening, keeping your electrical bills down, the overall cost of all of this down, and it's good for the plants too. They will grow under just artificial, mine do quite well, but it does rack up my electrical bill a lot. If you've seen some of my other videos, we have a lot of construction going on here, and so some of the rooms that I might grow these in, I just can't use them right now, so this was my only option. Also, I had to have a place where I could completely protect it with tarps so that the cats won't get at it. There's a cat standing right here right now eyeballing them. They love to eat seedlings. So I needed to have a spot where I could close it in, and I didn't have to worry about what it looked like, so the basement worked for me. When it comes to planting, there are all kinds of different ways to do it. Everybody has their own opinion, and depending on your gardening style, this may not work for you, but this is what works for me. I started off using these 6-pack kind of planters, mostly because that's what I was taught when I was a child. They work fine, but the problem is that plants outgrow these very quickly. There are even 8-pack ones where each grow area is a little bit smaller, and it seems like within a week or 2 weeks your plants have already outgrown this and you have to transplant them. And then depending on what you transplant them into and the time of the year, you may end up having to transplant them a second time before it's time to go in the ground, and that's just a lot of extra time, a lot of extra stress on the plants, so I didn't like that. So the next thing I tried were larger grow containers. These worked really well. They can hold the plants for a long time. You can get them in different sizes. They have drainage holes in the bottom already for you. So these things worked very well. The problem with these is that they're kind of expensive. If you get them because maybe you get plants from friends or you bought some seedlings and they came in these, then by all means use them. They're a good option, but what I've realized was that just a simple solo cup or a store brand solo cup works really well. All I do is take them, poke a couple of holes in the bottom so that they can have drainage, and use them for planting. They're deep, so the roots have a lot of space to expand. They're good size, so I never have to transplant them from the moment they're seeds all the way until they go in the ground. They just stay in these. You can write on them with a Sharpie what you're planting so that you don't ever have to worry about those little plastic seed markers you can put in. They're just very, very easy. The other thing that you can do is that this traditional setup with these 6-packs is you'd fill one of these trays. It holds about, I think, 8 of the 6-packs in there, and then you take one of these clear covers and you put it over the top, and that holds the moisture in and keeps it so the seedlings they don't need to be watered every day. But like I said, really quickly they outgrow these plastic covers and you only end up using them for about a week. So I don't really worry too much about those or the 6-packs. Just plant them right into these cups, set the cups into the trays, fill the whole tray up with as many cups as you can fit, and then when the seeds are very young, you water them from the top. The roots haven't gotten deep enough yet, so you just gently water them from the top. But once they've gotten bigger, watering is very easy. All you do is you fill the bottom tray with about ½ an inch of water, and it absorbs up through those holes you poked in the bottom of the cups, and that's it. And you only have to water them every few days, and it really helps to encourage those roots to get down deep so that when you transplant them, they're already full depth of the cup and they're really ready to be strong and hardy outside and get water from down deep, especially if you're in an area where you're not getting a lot of rain. Like I said, planting in these red cups is very easy. Just simply fill the cup up pretty close to the top, although you do want to leave a little bit of space just so that when you water it, they don't overflow. Make sure you tamp it down. I've had it a couple of times where something happens, maybe a chunk of wood or something in the potting mix, and it wedges, and then there's an air gap at the bottom of this cup, and then later on when you're watering it from the bottom, there's not enough soil down at the bottom of the cup to absorb up. so you really need to make sure you tamp it down pretty well, but don't pack it so hard that the roots have a hard time growing. So something like that, a little bit of space at the top, and then all you have to do for planting, first of all, check the back of your package. It's going to have a recommended seed depth on each package, so I get a rough idea of approximately how deep I need to plant. This one says 1/4 of an inch, so not very deep. So then just take your finger, make a little indent right in the middle of the cup, approximately 1/4 of an inch deep, and then pour in seeds. When I plant seeds, I always plant two. I try to always plant 2 seeds. If you get 3 or 4, so be it, but make sure you get more than 1. This is kind of a square foot gardening recommendation, and it works really well. There's no sense in dumping in a ton of seeds into each cup. You're going to end up thinning them out or cutting off the weaker seeds later. But you also don't want to plant just 1, just in case it doesn't germinate. You want to make sure you have a backup in there. So I always plant 2 and then give it probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then I will go through with scissors and just very gently cut off whichever seedling isn't doing well. Keep the strongest one. A couple more things to keep in mind when you're planting. First of all, when you want to start your seeds. There are some plants that you need to start very early. For example, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, anything that can withstand colder temperatures, you want to start those fairly early. You'll want to do a little research depending on where you live and figure out when your approximate last frost date could be. Here in New Hampshire, I think it's somewhere around the middle of May, May 11th, May 12th, somewhere in there. So you want to look, and the seeds will say on the package days to maturity, and in some cases it will say when you should start them, how far ahead of planting them in the ground you should start them. So go according to that. I don't want to give you specific recommendations because it's different for everyone, but typically I've already started my broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, broccoli rabe, and I think that's it so far. I started those a little over a week ago, and then in the next couple of days I'll be starting my tomatoes, and I think that's it for right now. I have to check my notes, but again, look online, do some research, look at the seeds, and also growveg.com, the program we use, it gives you recommendations on that when you tell it where you live. It'll give you zone information and frost date information and things like that. The last recommendation is just, I always plant probably 4 or 5 extra plants of everything. The program Grow Veg, or if you do it out on paper, you'll have a really good idea of how many things you should plant. Again, these packages all say the spacing between them once you get them in the ground, and based off whatever space you have in your garden, you can do the math and figure out how many you'll need. Again, square foot gardening is all about trying to save time, save seeds, things like that, and so I plant exactly what I should. I don't plant a bunch and then thin them out later. But I also want to make sure I have extras just in case when I'm growing my seeds, if some die, I'm not stuck with empty space in my garden. So I always plant extra. I have yet to ever actually need the majority of them. I almost always end up giving them away to friends. But it's better to be safe than sorry. At least plant a few extra of everything. Save yourself the hassle later. Here are the seeds that I planted a little over a week ago. This is a mixture of broccoli, Brussels sprouts, 2 different kinds of kale, and also broccoli rabe or rayab. Some there. The other ones I didn't slide down, they're down there. So they're all doing pretty well. This is an example of growth after, I think this is about 9 days. I don't remember exactly which day I planted these, but you can see they're all doing pretty well. They have good color. You can see that there most of them have 2 or 3 plants growing, and I'll be going through later and pruning out the weaker of those plants. Alright, that's it for part 2. Thanks for watching.